Last week in the Fayez Bite Reloaded, we started covering the O.J. Simpson case, from the lead up to the Bronco chase to his arrest to the indictment, all the way to the prosecution's case. Today, it's the defense's turn. What kind of case will they present that'll sway the jury that O.J. Simpson is not guilty? We'll discuss that, the jury's verdict, and everything that came after that. This is the people of the state of California versus O.J. Simpson, Part 2. The Fayez Bite is reloaded, and it starts right now. This is a rarity when I say this, but good Monday afternoon, everybody. Yes, it's Monday. It's a beautiful day in the great state of Oregon. Monday afternoon, August 8th, 2022. This is Bethea's Bite Reloaded, your home for news, opinions, debates, your voice and justice served. I am Ernest Bethea, the last outlaw. Thank you so much for joining me. Due to circumstances beyond my control, I was unable to get this one done on yesterday, so I'm bringing it to you today. And hopefully And ladies and gentlemen, I am sorry about that. I got booted off my whole entire computer, but I'm back now. Um, I pray that this actually has no reflection on the entire broadcast. Anyway, like I said, this is Bethea's Bite Reloaded, your home for news, opinions, debates, your voice, and justice served. I'm Ernest Bethea, the last outlaw. Thank you all so much for joining me this week. Last week, we covered only half, only half of the O.J. Simpson case. And by half, I mean we've gotten through everything that led up to his arrest from the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson, the murder of Ron Goldman, the flight to Chicago, the suicide note, the Bronco chase, the arrest, the preliminary hearings, the first time around where he said dejectedly where he entered his plea as simply not guilty. Then turned right back around again when he had another preliminary hearing, and as to plead his case, he was, quote, 100% not guilty. The media coverage has been crazy. Then we go right to the trial, the jury makeup, and the prosecution's case, including all the DNA evidence that was presented. Now, I'm hoping I have a little bit of company as I go through this case, present my opinion, and hopefully I'll have some people here to present their opinions as well. But I also would like to hear from you as well. So let's just go ahead and put this out there. I'm looking for you guys to play the role of the 13th juror. I know, yeah, I know it's been years and years and it's been years. And the trial's already over with. The jury already says that OJ is not guilty, yada yada yada. But I want to hear from you though. Do you, to this day, do you believe he's guilty? Do you believe he's not guilty? Jump on in, drop in your thoughts, because not only are we're gonna go through this part of the case, but we're gonna go through the defense part of the case. We're gonna hit the jury's verdict. We're gonna talk. We're gonna discuss our own verdict before we go into the aftermath of the case and the Vegas incident that ultimately did land the juice behind bars. And once again, I will have my house cleaning at the end of this podcast. So again, thank you all for joining me. To all 110 subscribers on YouTube, thank you. I appreciate you all. And I've said it once, I've said it a million times over. You are the engine that keeps Bethea's Bite running and well reloaded. So thank you many times over. Let me go ahead and get myself set up here. And we will begin. All right. And my computer's running slow. You gotta love technology these days. Oh, excuse me. I'm already deep into the defense case. All right, here we go. All right. Now, like I mentioned last week, we covered everything all the way up to the prosecution's case. Now we start the defense case. OJ hired a team of high-profile defense lawyers initially led by Robert Shapiro, who was previously a civil lawyer known for settling, and then subsequently by Johnny Cochran, who at that point was known for police brutality and civil rights cases. The team included noted defense attorneys F. Lee Bailey, Robert Kardashian, Harvard appeals lawyer Alan Dershowitz, his student Robert Blazier, and the dean of Santa Clara University School of Law, Gerald Uleman. Assisting Johnny Cochran were Carl E. Douglas and Sean Hawley. Barry Scheck and Peter Newfield were also hired onto the team. They headed the Innocence Project and specialized in DNA evidence. Simpson's defense was said to have cost anywhere between $3 and $6 million. The media dubbed the group of talented attorneys the Dream Team. Now, while the defense was said to cost anywhere between $3 and $6 million, the taxpayer cost of prosecution was well over $9 million. So now let's get to the case on the defense side. The defense's theory, their reasonable theory, was summarized as compromised, contaminated, and corrupted in opening statements. They argued that the DNA evidence against OJ was compromised Okay. Apparently, I guess I get knocked out, I get right back in again. I get knocked out, I get right back in again. Such is my life. So I'm back. Um, and I'm about ready to start on the defense case against on O.J. Simpson, and I was just starting to hit where the theory comes into. And right now on the phone with me is James from Darkness Exposed and American Family Truth. How you doing, big man?
I'm good. I'm actually getting online right now.
Oh, perfect. I guess I will see you on here in just a moment.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we're working at here is getting this whole thing going. Here, we got the defense theory saying that the reasonable doubt theory is summarized as compromised, contaminated, and corrupted in opening statements. They argue that the DNA evidence against OJ was compromised by the mishandling of criminalists Dennis Fung and Andrea Mazzola during the collection phase of evidence gathering, and that 100% of the quote unquote real killer's DNA had vanished from evidence samples. The evidence was then contaminated in the LAPD crime lab by criminalist Colin Yamauchi, and Simpson's DNA from his reference vial was transferred to all but 3 exhibits. The remaining 3 exhibits were planted by the police and thus corrupted by police fraud. The defense also questioned the timeline, claiming the murders happened around 11 o'clock that night. Robert, let's see, Dr. Robert Huizinga, excuse me, testified on July 14th of 1995 that O.J. Simpson was not physically capable of carrying out the murders due to chronic arthritis and old football injuries. During cross-examination, the prosecution produced an exercise video that Simpson made a few weeks before the murders, titled O.J. Simpson Minimum Maintenance, Fitness for Men, which demonstrated that Simpson was anything but frail. Aha, that's James now.
Hello.
Welcome. We're already into the first testimony on the defense's side by Dr. Robert Huizinga, if I'm pronouncing the name right. He testified on July 14th of 95 that OJ was not physically capable of carrying out the murders due to chronic arthritis and old football injuries. Now,
I'm pretty beat up. I'm sure I could have done it. Just saying.
I was gonna say I could see that, except there was just one problem. What came next on the cross-examination? During cross-examination, the prosecution produced an exercise video OJ made a few weeks before the murders, titled O.J. Simpson Minimum Maintenance, Fitness for Men, which demonstrated that OJ was anything but frail. Dr. Huizinga admitted afterwards that OJ could have committed the murders if he was in the, quote, throes of an adrenaline rush.
There you go.
Your thoughts on that little piece of testimony? Hey.
Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, adrenaline, you could do a lot of things.
Yes, you can. Come on, welcome, Fox. Fox, I would love to have you join in the conversation, brother.
Arctic Fox, the man, the myth, the legend.
You got it.
Yeah.
Dr. Michael Baden, a forensic pathologist, testified that the murders happened closer to 11 p.m., which is when Simpson had an alibi, and stated that Brown was still conscious, standing, and took a step after her throat was cut, and that Ron Goldman was standing and fighting his assailant for 10 minutes with a lacerated jugular.
You don't fight 10 minutes with a lacerated jugular.
You're
You're lucky if you're standing for like a minute, if that.
You get cut at the jugular, you're pretty much done.
Yes, sir. Doesn't take long to bleed out.
Right. After the trial, Baden admitted his claim of Goldman's long struggle was inaccurate. There you go. And that testifying for OJ was a mistake. There you go. Critics claim that Baden knowingly gave false testimony in order to collect a $100,000 retainer because the week before he testified, Dr. Gerdes admitted that Goldman's blood was in Simpson's Bronco, despite Ron never having an opportunity within his lifetime to be in a Bronco.
Huh. Very interesting.
Exactly. Like an old song used to say back in the day, it's one of those things that make you go, All right, here we go now to their compromised and contaminated theory. The testimony continues. Defense attorneys Barry Scheck and Peter Newfield argued that the results from the DNA testing were not reliable because the police were, quote, sloppy in collecting and preserving it from the crime scene. Fung and Mazzola did admit to making several mistakes during evidence collection, which included not always changing gloves between handling evidence items, packaging and storing the evidence items using plastic bags rather than paper bags as recommended, and storing them in the police van, which was not refrigerated, for up to 7 hours after collection. This, they argued, would allow bacteria to degrade all of the real killer's DNA, quote unquote, and thus make the samples more susceptible to cross-contamination in the LAPD crime lab. Now, I'm no criminologist myself, but everything I just read that they're saying that police didn't do, to me, is pure common sense. The last thing you want to have happen. The last thing you want to have happen is corrupted DNA evidence, corrupted evidence, period.
Definitely. Let's see.
Oh, wow. This, I want to hear from a man, the myth, the legend himself. Arctic
Yes,
Fox,
I do. Sure.
Telling everybody here, Matthias Bite Reloaded, he can sum up why OJ got off in less than 5 minutes.
I'd like to hear it.
Me too. This will be interesting. I think my wife summed it up maybe in a lot less than that. Lady Outlaw, say it again. Money. And when the moment I hear that, I hear my dad speaking. Money talks and BS walks.
Wife calls and you must answer.
Ladies and gentlemen, joining us now, the man, the myth, the legend, Arctic Fox True Crime.
Okay, so you want to know why he got off? I'll tell you why he got off. You got to remember,
less than 5.
We were just.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, brother.
We were just coming off of the L.A. riots, the Rodney King riots. Okay, you had Mark Furman sitting there being a racist ass cop during that. So he's dropped the N-word. We know he's racist. He's the police. He's in charge of this whole operation with OJ, the investigation there. They turned the crime scene into a shit show. They didn't handle the evidence correctly in any way, shape, or form. So you got a racist police chief. You've got contaminated crime scene. Yeah, of course they let OJ off.
Yeah, it was definitely a shit show from beginning to end.
Now that is an interesting theory because quite possibly had it been a guilty verdict, which we will get to the verdict in a little while, but had it got to a guilty verdict, my opinion, the riots would have been 10 times worse.
Yeah, absolutely they would, 100%.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason why they found him innocent just out of fear of what the riots would be like if they had found him guilty.
There we go.
Yeah, you get a point.
Onward. The contamination claim made by microbiologist Dr. John Gerdes. He testified on August 2nd, 1995, that forensic PCR DNA matching is not reliable. And I'm quoting him, the LAPD crime lab has a substantial contamination problem. It is chronic in the sense that it doesn't go away. Gerdes testified that because of the LAPD's history of contamination, he would not consider any of the PCR DNA matches in this case reliable because the tests were carried out by the LAPD. He also claimed that the consulting lab's PCR DNA matches were not reliable, as the evidence they tested went through the LAPD for packaging and shipping. Gerdes believed only 3 of the DNA matches to have been valid, which were the same 3 the defense alleged were planted by police. During cross, Dr. Gerdes admitted that there was no evidence that cross-contamination had occurred, and that he was only testifying to, quote, what might occur and not what actually did occur. He accepted that the victim's blood was in the Bronco and Simpson's blood was at the crime scene, and neither was due to contamination. He also conceded that nothing happened during packaging and shipping that would affect the validity of the results at the 2 consulting labs. The prosecution implied that Gerdes was not a credible witness. He had no forensic experience and had only testified for criminal defendants in the past, and had always said that the DNA evidence was against them was not reliable due to contamination. Clark also implied that it was not a coincidence that the 3 evidence items he initially said were valid were the same 3 the defense claimed were planted, while the other 58 were all false positives, and the 47 substrate controls which are used to determine if contamination occurred were all false negatives. Defense DNA expert Dr. Henry Lee testified on August 24th of 95 and admitted that Gerdes' claim was, quote, highly improbable. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
I mean, I'll play devil's advocate for a minute. It wouldn't be the first time that the LAPD had planted evidence. I don't think they did in this case, but it certainly wouldn't be the first time they've done it.
Yeah. Definitely no, the police are definitely not infallible, but I mean, I still think he's guilty of sin, though.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
I'm thinking the same thing, but we'll have that opportunity to play 13th juror once we all go over the verdict.
You know, the thing is, if it had just been the allegations that evidence had been planted, that would be one thing. Right. But you had all the other stuff that mounted up, the contaminated crime scene, the riots that were going on at the time. There were so many different factors, and all of that led to the outcome, which, again, you know, we know he did it. Just like we know Casey Anthony killed her baby, but the jury has spoke. So
yeah, and they can't try. And of course, we got the double jeopardy law in effect. See, but I always said it like this: they may have been acquitted in a court of law, but in a court of public opinion, which is where we're playing the jurors for, that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
The defense initially claimed that the 3 exhibits were planted by police, but eventually argued that virtually all the blood evidence against Simpson was planted in a police conspiracy. They accused prison nurse Fano Paradis, criminalist Dennis Fong, Andrea Mazzola, and Colin Yamauchi and Vanatter and Furman of participating in a plot to frame OJ. In closing arguments, Cochran called Furman and Vanatter twins of deception and told the jury to remember Vanatter as the man who carried the blood and Furman as the man who found the glove. The only physical evidence offered by the defense that the police tried to frame OJ was the allegation that two of the 108 DNA evidence samples tested in the case contained the preservative EDTA. I will not try to pronounce that whole thing, but that's that preservative they found. Ironically, it was the prosecution who asked to have samples tested for the preservative, not the defense. Go figure that one. The defense alleged that the drop of blood on the back gate at the Bundy crime scene, which matched Simpson, and the blood found on a pair of socks in Simpson's bedroom, which matched Nicole's, were planted by police. In order to support the claim, the defense pointed to the presence of EDTA, a preservative found in the purple top collection tubes used for police reference vials in the samples. On July 24th, go ahead.
Oh, no. I just went, huh.
Again, one of those things that make it go, right?
Hmm.
On July 24th of 95, Dr. Frederick Reeders, a forensic toxicologist who had analyzed the results provided by FBI Special Agent Roger Marks, testified that the level of EDTA in the evidence samples was higher than that which is normally found in blood. This appeared to support the claim that they came from the reference vials. During cross, Marsha Clark asked Dr. Reeders to read out loud a portion of the EPA article that stated what the normal levels of EDTA in the blood are, which he referenced during his testimony. This demonstrated that he misread it and that levels found in evidence samples were consistent with those in blood that was not preserved in a police reference vial. The doctor then claimed it was a typo, but the prosecution produced a direct copy from the EPA confirming the normal amounts of EDTA found in unpreserved blood. Oh, this is a good one now. The prosecution also had Dr. Reeders admit that EDTA is also found in food, and specifically the ingredients used in McDonald's Big Mac and French fries that OJ had eaten earlier that night with Kato Kalin.
Huh. Blame it on McDonald's.
See, the defense would have had better luck if it was found in a jelly donut. But...
Oh, that's too good. Too good. FBI Special Agent Roger Marks was called by the defense on July 25th to testify that EDTA was present in evidence samples. Yet instead, he did not identify EDTA in the blood, contradicting the testimony given by Dr. Reeders the day before. Initially, he conceded the blood samples responded like EDTA responded and was consistent with the presence of EDTA, but clarified his response after a hearing during the lunch break that everyone is saying I found EDTA, but I'm not saying that. When the defense accused their own witness of changing his demeanor to favor the prosecution, he replied, I cannot be entirely truthful by only giving yes or no answers. March stated it was impossible to ascertain with certainty the presence of EDTA, while the presumptive test for EDTA was positive. The identification test for EDTA was inconclusive. Mars also tested his own unpreserved blood and got the same results for EDTA levels as the evidence samples, which he said conclusively disproved the claim the evidence blood came from the reference files. He contended that the defense had jumped to conclusions from the presumptive test results, while his tests had in fact shown that those blood stains did come from preserved blood. So it looks to me, while a lot of this is proving that how good the blood evidence is. At the same time, we're getting a lot of twisting and bending of the evidence in the case by the defense. At least that's how I'm seeing it.
Yeah, the defense definitely was trying to discredit everything the prosecution was doing.
Mm-hmm. Which I hate to say that's their job, but that's what they.
Yeah,
But
the prosecution kind of made it easy for them too.
Mm-hmm.
That and the witnesses talking to the tabloids.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Here's their theory on what happened at the back gate. The defense alleged that OJ's blood on the back gate at the Bundy crime scene was planted by police. The blood on the back gate was collected on July 3rd of '95, rather than June 13th, the day after the murders. The volume of DNA on the blood was significantly higher than the other blood evidence collected on June 13th. The volume of DNA was so high that the defense conceded that it could not be explained by contamination in the lab, yet noted it was unusual for blood to have more DNA on it than the other samples collected at the crime scene, especially since it had been left exposed to the elements for several weeks and after the crime scene has supposedly been washed over. On March 20th, 1995, Van Natter testified that he instructed Fung to collect the blood on the gate on June 13th, and Fung admitted he had not done so. The defense suggested the reason why Fung did not collect the blood is because it was not there that day. Scheck showed a blown-up photograph taken of the back gate on June 13th, and he admitted he could not see it in the photograph. The prosecution responded by showing that a different photograph showed that the blood was present on the back gate on June 13th and before blood had been taken from Simpson's arm. Officer Robert Risk was the first officer to the crime scene and the one who pointed out the blood on the back gate to Mark Furman, who documented it in his notes that night. Multiple officers also testified under oath that the blood was present on the back gate the night of the murders. The prosecution also pointed out that the media cameras present proved that Van Natter never returned to the Bundy crime scene, which was Nicole Brown's home, that evening where Simpson's blood was allegedly planted. So, which is which? Which is which? Was it there or wasn't it there?
That's a good question.
Again, that's why I keep saying that they're twisting and turning this thing into their favor. Trying to discredit the prosecution's case so far.
Trying to get a reasonable doubt implanted into the jury's heads.
Exactly. Evidence from the Bronco. Defense attorney Barry Scheck alleged police had twice planted the victim's blood inside Simpson's Bronco. An initial collection was made on June 13th. The defense accused Van Natter of planting the victim's blood in the Bronco when he returned to Simpson's home later that evening. The prosecution responded that the Bronco had already been impounded by the time Van Natter returned and was not even at Rockingham. Now that one's got me scratching my head. How do you plant blood? How do you plant blood in the Bronco twice over?
Huh.
Somebody got knocked out, Fox?
Yeah, just internet issues. No big deal.
You're just dealing with internet issues. Just a little earlier, I got knocked off. I got knocked totally off. Shut down twice.
Wow.
But hey,
yeah, his computer went poo poo.
Yeah, but hey, we're here. I'm talking about the Bronco evidence, saying that the blood was planted there twice.
Well, they alleged that the blood that was on the door of the Bronco had been planted. I remember that.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, like I just read, the defense had alleged that police planted the victim's blood inside Simpson's Bronco. Initial collection made on June 13th, the day after the murders, and the defense accused Van Natter of planting the victim's blood in the Bronco when he returned to Simpson's home later that evening.
Wasn't it on a footprint?
That was if that was the case, how do you plant that inside the Bronco?
Good question.
Moving onward to the socks. The defense alleged. Here's another planted one. The defense alleged that police planted Brown's blood on the socks found in Simpson's bedroom. The socks were collected on June 13th and had blood from both OJ and Nicole, but her blood on the socks was not identified until August 4th. The socks were found by Mark Furman, but the defense suggested that Van Natter planted the blood. He had received blood reference files from the victims earlier that day from the coroner and booked them immediately into evidence. Van Natter then drove back to Rockingham later that evening to hand-deliver the reference file for Simpson to Thong, which the defense alleged gave him opportunity to plant the blood. Thong testified he could not see the blood on the socks he collected from OJ's bedroom, but the prosecution later demonstrated that those blood stains are only visible underneath a microscope. Van Natter denied planting Brown's blood on the socks. The video from Willie Ford indicated that the socks had already been collected and stored in the evidence van before Van Natter arrived, and footage from the media cameras present appeared to prove that he never went inside the evidence van when he arrived at Rockingham. So, again,
I was sitting there thinking, if like we were talking about last time, the only reason these types of arguments were working, or maybe worked with the jury, is because of OJ's celebrity status. Any other person, anybody would have had this evidence on them. They wouldn't have been arguing for things being planted.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd go that far. I think at that particular time, had it been, any black man that is accused of this stuff, of course, granted, they wouldn't have the money for the type of lawyers that OJ had either to argue that.
Oh no, I mentioned this. I mentioned this at the near the top. The defense for OJ cost anywhere between $3 and $6 million.
But given the time that this happened so close to those riots, I think that, there's a good possibility that they would have argued the same thing for just about any black man that hit the court. Granted, OJ's celebrity definitely helped him. That's part of the reason why you had so many people rooting for him out in the streets. Go, OJ, go, when he's driving 30 miles an hour down the damn highway.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
Right. Like I said, for as far as the bill for his defense was anywhere between 3 and 6, but the taxpayer for the prosecution against OJ, that totaled up to around 9.
well, I want to refund.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Fox.
No, I just said I want a refund on my $9 million since he didn't get it.
Right.
I think a lot of people want their refund on that too. A lot.
Yeah.
Okay, the glove. Oh, remember that, because we may hear remember the glove. Remember this is where this is the biggest piece of evidence that Johnny Cochran based his closing on. The last exhibit allegedly planted was the bloody glove found at OJ's property by Mark Fuhrman. Unlike the sock and the back gate, the defense provided zero physical or eyewitness evidence to support their claim that the prosecution could then refute. Legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin published an article in the New Yorker months before the trial began, which cited a source in OJ's defense team that they intended to accuse Fuhrman of planting the glove with the motive being racism. Okay, let me catch this at this point. Yes, we know Fuhrman's a racist, but why would he want to plant the glove? What does that got? What does that? What? And as my first caregiving client would say, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China?
Maybe he didn't like his Naked Gun movies.
Oh, I'll laugh at that one, but again, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China?
Yeah.
Shapiro later admitted he was Toobin's source. Defense attorney Robert Shapiro himself was the source. Defense attorney F. Lee Bailey suggested that Fuhrman found the glove at the crime scene, picked it up with a stick and placed it in a plastic bag, and then concealed it in his sock when he drove into Simpson's home with detectives Lange, Benatter, and Phillips. Bailey suggested that he then planted the glove in order to frame Simpson, with the motive either being racism or a desire to become the hero in a high-profile case. Scheck also suggested that Fuhrman broke into Simpson's Bronco and used the glove like a paintbrush to plant blood onto and inside the Bronco. The prosecution denied that Fuhrman planted the glove, and they noted that several officers had already combed over the crime scene for almost 2 hours before Fuhrman arrived, and none had noticed a second glove at the scene. Lange testified that 14 other officers were there when Fuhrman arrived and all said that there was only one glove at the crime scene. Lieutenant Frank Spangler also testified that he was with Fuhrman for the duration of his time there and stated he would have seen Fuhrman purloin the glove if he had in fact done so. Clark added that Fuhrman did not know whether OJ had an alibi, if there were any witnesses to the murders, whose blood was on the glove, that the Bronco belonged to Simpson, or whether Cato Kalin had already searched the area where the glove was found. During cross-examination by Bailey, Fuhrman denied he had used the N-word to describe African Americans in the 10 years prior to his testimony. A few months later, the defense discovered audio tapes of Furman repeatedly using the N-word, 41 times in total, 8 years prior. The Furman tapes became a cornerstone of the defense case that Furman's testimony lacked credibility. Marcia Clark called the tapes the biggest red herring there ever was. Fox, you made mention about Furman and his racism. Your thoughts, please.
I mean, I've given my thoughts on it. I honestly think that the fact that he had been involved in the Rodney King situation and he was one of the lead investigators on this whole O.J. Simpson thing is the main reason, a very big contributing factor as to why the defense was able to play the race card as effectively as they were.
I didn't know he was part of the investigation for Rodney King.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was the police chief during the Rodney King riots.
Oh.
Oh.
Yep. That's right. That's right. I totally forgot about that.
Me too.
After McKee was forced to hand over the tapes to the defense, Furman says he asked the prosecution for a redirect to explain the context of those tapes, but the prosecution and his fellow police officers abandoned him after Judge Lance Ito played the audio tapes in open court for the public to hear. The public reaction to the tapes was explosive and compared to the video of the Rodney King beating from a year prior. After the trial, Furman said that he was not a racist and apologized for his previous language, saying he was play acting for a screenplay when he made the tapes and had been asking to be as dramatic as possible. Many of his minority former co-workers expressed support for him. Furman was called back to the witness stand on September 6th of 95 by the defense after the prosecution refused to redirect him to answer more questions. The jury was absent, but the exchange was televised. Furman, facing a possible prosecution for perjury, was instructed by his attorney to invoke the Fifth Amendment and to avoid self-incrimination to 2 consecutive questions he was asked. Defense attorney Ullman asked Furman if it was his intention to plead the Fifth to all questions, and Furman's attorney instructed him to reply yes. Ullman then briefly spoke with the other members of the defense and said he had just one more question. Did you plant or manufacture any evidence in this case? Following his attorney's instruction, Furman replied, I choose to assert my Fifth Amendment privilege. Quote, end quote.
And that was the final nail in his coffin.
Yep. Final nail in his coffin, and pretty much by the jury's verdict, OJ's get out of jail wings.
But the icing on the cake was the gloves at the end.
The glove. Oh,
I'm gonna let you say that part.
Oh yeah. That's when I'm reading it now. Now, Johnny Cochran summed it up by saying, "If it doesn't fit, you must have quit." Talking about the leather gloves appear too tight for OJ to put on easily, especially over the latex gloves he wore underneath. Clark claimed that OJ was acting when he appeared to be struggling to put on the gloves. Yet Cochran replied, I don't think he could act the size of his hands. Christopher Darden then told...
You look at his hands. I mean, I remember looking at that. He had his hands splayed like that, and he was trying to put the gloves on. Right. On top of it, if there was blood on the gloves and they were leather, there's a good chance the gloves could have shrunk a little bit or got stiff.
He did a better job of acting in the courtroom than he did on the Naked Gun.
Oh, that's funny, but true.
Oh my God. God, somebody call 911. Arctic Fox True Crime is on fire. The prosecution stated they believe the gloves. There you go. The prosecution stated they believe the gloves shrank from having been soaked in the blood of the victims. Richard Rubin, the former vice president of glove maker Aris Isotoner Incorporated, which makes the gloves in question, testified on September 12th of 1995 that the gloves had indeed shrunk from their original size. Christopher Darden produced a new pair of gloves, new pair of the same type of gloves, which fit Simpson when he tried them on. After the trial, Cochran revealed that Bailey had goaded Darden into asking Simpson to try on the gloves, and that Shapiro had told Simpson in advance how to give the appearance that they did not fit. Dang. Now, if that had as far as this is my opinion, had that kind of had that thing been put into evidence, I think they could have gotten a guilty verdict out of that.
If several things would have been put into evidence, they would have got a guilty verdict.
Mm-hmm. Can you agree with that on that one, Fox?
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Absolutely.
The closing arguments, Darden ridiculed the notion that police officers might have wanted to frame OJ. He questioned why, if the LAPD was against Simpson, they went to his house 8 times on domestic violence calls against Nicole between 86 and 88, but didn't arrest him. They only arrested him on charges of abuse in January of 89 when photos of Nicole's face were entered into the record. Darden noted that police did not arrest OJ for 5 days after the 94 murders. During the prosecution's closing argument, Cochran and Scheck very noticeably objected 71 times in order to lessen its effect on the jury. And though Lance Ito overruled 69 of them, he did not once admonish Cochran or Scheck or threaten them with contempt of court for their behavior. My opinion, he should have.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Also in
I don't see here's something though. I mean, I remember seeing the pictures of Nicole's battered face.
Yeah.
I don't know how that did not make a bigger impact with the jury than what it did, because it certainly made an impact with me when I saw it.
I know that's right. I know that's right. Cochran's summation to the jury said he was unable to refute any of the prosecution's claims, so he instead dedicated his entire argument to attacking the LAPD, particularly Mark Furman, Lange, and Vannatter. He emphasized that Furman was proved to have repeatedly referred to black people as the N-word, and also to have boasted of beating young black men in his role as a police officer. Cochran compared Furman to Adolf Hitler and referred to him as a, quote, genocidal racist, a perjurer, America's worst nightmare, and the personification of evil, and claimed without proof that Furman had planted the glove in an attempt to frame Simpson for the murders based purely on his dislike of interracial couples. Cochran also presented a piece of paper to the jury with the title Vannatter's Big Lies, and claimed without any evidence or proof that Vannatter had returned to the crime scene with OJ's blood to plant it there, despite Vannatter having previously testified that he had given it to Dennis Fong in order to avoid the exhibits getting mixed up. Cochran referred to Furman and Vannatter as the two devils of deception, and very notably implored the jurors to stop this cover-up and acquit Simpson and send the police a message, which was interpreted by many as a naked appeal for a jury nullification. Following that summation, Johnny Cochran received numerous death threats and hired bodyguards from Louis Farrakhan. In response, Fred Goldman, who himself was Jewish, referred to Johnny Cochran himself as, quote, the worst kind of racist ever and a sick man for comparing Furman to Hitler while associating himself with Farrakhan, who was widely considered a black supremacist and anti-Semite. While Shapiro, also Jewish, expressed that he was particularly offended by Cochran comparing Furman's claims to the Holocaust, claiming that no comparison would ever be possible. In an interview regarding Vincent Bugliosi's analysis on the case, Van Natter claimed that he was so infuriated at Cochran's claims about him that he felt the desire to strangle him in the courtroom. All right, gentlemen, you're up because we're getting down to the nitty-gritty of the initial case.
Well, there was a lot of bad things said between everybody there, and it didn't help.
Mm-hmm. Fox?
You know, the best way I can give a real-time synopsis of that case, it was the 90s version of the Summer Wells case. It got turned into a complete fucking shit show from the get-go.
Oh yeah,
I can totally agree about that because look what we're dealing with right now with Summer Wells. All right, here we go. The verdict is about to come in. Fears grew that the race riots, similar to the riots in '92, would erupt across Los Angeles and the rest of the country, if OJ were convicted of the murders. As a result, all Los Angeles police officers were put on 12-hour shifts. The police arranged for more than 100 police officers on horseback to surround the LA County courthouse on the day the verdict was announced, in case of rioting by the crowd. President Bill Clinton was briefed on security measures if rioting were to occur nationwide. The only testimony the jury reviewed was that of limo driver Park. At 10:07 a.m. Tuesday, October 3rd, 1995, Simpson was acquitted on both counts of murder. The jury arrived at the verdict at 3 o'clock p.m. on October 2nd after 4 hours of deliberation, but it postponed the announcement. After the verdict was read, juror number 9, 44-year-old Lionel Cryer, gave Simpson a Black Power raised fist salute. The New York Times reported that Cryer was a former member of the Revolutionary Nationalist Black Panther Party that prosecutors had inexplicably left on the panel. An estimated 100 million people worldwide watched or listened to the verdict's announcement. Long-distance telephone call volume declined by 58%, and trading volume on the New York Stock Exchange decreased by 41%. Water usage decreased as people avoided using bathrooms. So much work stopped that the verdict cost an estimated $480 million in lost productivity. The United States Supreme Court received the message on the verdict during oral arguments, with justices quietly passing the note to each other while listening to the attorney's presentation. Congressmen canceled press conferences, with one telling reporters, "Not only would you not be here, but I wouldn't be here either." All right. Let's go to the 13th juror. That's the three of us. We got the prosecution's evidence in part one. We heard the defense argument in part two. What say you, James?
Well, technically, with the evidence that was presented by the prosecution, or was allowed to be presented by the prosecution, DNA alone, I would have convicted him.
Mm-hmm.
What the defense was claiming was highly unlikely, I thought, considering, I mean, the effort it would take to plant evidence and, Johnny Cochran's closed the thing with the glove. I'm like, no. I mean, I didn't buy that at all. But I mean, he was basically race baiting the jury. What he was doing was closing arguments, and then all the evidence that wasn't admissible in court. I mean, we know the evidence. They weren't presented some of the evidence, but I mean, the wounds on OJ's hand, the blood in the gloves, the blood in the car, the blood on the crime scene, all the DNA evidence. I thought it was a slam dunk case against him. I mean, considering his history of domestic abuse against her.
Yeah, it's especially his history of domestic abuse against her.
Yeah.
See, I remember the trial. I was only like 18 years old when this was going on.
So and
I, initially I bounced back and forth between guilty and not guilty. But the more evidence that came out with the blood and shit, and him using that lame ass excuse that, oh, well, the gloves shrunk, blah blah blah. But the thing that sealed it for me more than anything was when those pictures of Nicole came out, and seeing how battered and bruised that she had been in those pictures. I was like, if he can do that to her, he could have killed her, no problem at all, and not even thought a second of it. And we were talking about things that you can do when your adrenaline is going, and yeah, when your adrenaline's up, you don't feel pain at all. Shit, I rolled my fucking Ford Explorer 6 times, walked out of that car, wasn't feeling any pain at all. But you know what? The next day I sure was. So yeah, when you're high on adrenaline, you can do all kinds of stuff. There was in my town one year, I remember a guy got shot by cops 6 times, and he kept on going because he was so high on adrenaline that he didn't even realize he'd been shot.
Yeah,
that's been known to happen. Whether you get shot or these days tased.
Yeah, I mean, like with the whole thing with adrenaline. I mean, I looked at those crime scene pictures, and the injuries that they sustained were horrific.
Oh yeah.
I mean, with all that blood, and all that, plus the evidence of what had happened to Nicole and Ron. I mean, nobody survives that.
No,
nobody survives that.
Both wounds. I mean, his wounds were fatal. Her wounds were.
Well, she
didn't last long. She was dead before she hit the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, just looking at what was done to Ron Goldman. You go for like I said to James earlier. If you go for the jugular, ain't no way somebody's gonna be able to survive, take a step before dropping again. You go for the
I mean, and that's the other thing too. This was such a brutal crime. This was a crime of passion. This was a crime of someone that was jealous, that was pissed off at the world. So that's why I mean, honestly, that points to OJ too. He's the only one that would have been that jealous of some brawn dude to go out there and kill 2 people.
Agree. Yeah. I absolutely agree with that. Which is why now that I go over this case again, I find Orenthal James Simpson guilty on both counts of first-degree murder.
Yes, guilty.
Yep, I agree. Guilty on all charges.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, like I said, the court of public opinion and the court of law differ.
Yes.
They acquitted him. The aftermath went like this. LA Police Chief Willie Williams at that time indicated that he had no plans to reopen the investigation, saying of the acquittals, it doesn't mean there's another murderer. The LAPD also declined to re-examine the evidence with modern methods because Fifth Amendment, Simpson cannot be tried again for the same crime. Better known to us as double jeopardy.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. The strong public reaction to Nicole Brown Simpson's letters and statements describing her abuse spurred the passage of the Violence Against Women Act in 1994, in which Clark and Douglas referred to as the OJ rule. After the trial, researchers report increased reporting, arrests, and harsher sentences for those convicted of domestic violence. But here's the other side of that though. There are so many cases of domestic violence. Some victims are scared to report it.
But he also said guys could be victims of domestic violence also. They're not going to report it because they don't want to admit they got their ass kicked by a woman.
Yeah.
But I don't hold any respect for a guy that can't control himself and treat a woman with respect. And I mean, I couldn't live with myself if I left bruises on a woman's face like that.
Mm-mm.
I'd be so ashamed of myself. I'd turn myself in.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah, and it came out that, Nicole had made several attempts to leave OJ before she was finally able to break free, and it just really sucks that once she did break free of his spell, this is how it ended up. So.
Yeah.
This reminds me of another movie too, and trust me, it's not any of the Naked Gun movies. It was a movie starring Julia Roberts, and honestly, the abuse she suffered in the movie scared the hell out of me. It's called Sleeping with the Enemy.
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, I've seen movies where with domestic violence happening, and I've seen the victims take beatings in these movies. I've heard about these in true crime stories, but that just took it to another level.
I mean, I couldn't imagine doing that to a woman. I mean, hitting a person, that's just not in me like that. Now, if they happen to hurt my wife or hurt my kids, I would find it in me to get a little stupid.
I would have to get stupid. I would have to get way more than stupid.
I'd be like one of those people if they did something like that to if someone had killed one of my children or something like that, I'd be one of those dads you see in the courtroom flying over the damn railing, attacking the guy who killed him.
They better get me in cuffs quick, because that's exactly what I do. For real.
I'd be like Kung Fu Panda jumping over the railing.
Okay, here was the polling data after the verdict. Polling showed that 75% of white Americans who thought OJ was guilty. 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4 white Americans thought OJ was guilty, while 70% of African Americans thought he was innocent. 10 years later, an NBC poll was taken, and they reported similar results. Only this time it's like 87% of whites believe he was guilty, compared to only 27% of African Americans believing so. 20 years later, polling showed the gap had narrowed with a majority of both now believing he was guilty. 83% of white Americans say so. 57% of African Americans. Shows you how minds change in time, right?
Mm-hmm. Especially when they can find the evidence readily now. I mean, the photographic evidence is just, ugh.
Yeah.
So did you want to talk about his Las Vegas escapades, or do you want to save that for a part 3?
Get out of my head. I was about ready to close up the initial murder case, and let's get down to the Vegas incident, the O.J. Simpson robbery case, and that was ugly in even of itself. Stupid, but yet ugly still.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the thing is, it happened on September 13th, 2007 at the Palace Station Hotel Casino. It's a hotel that's off the strip across the freeway from the Las Vegas Strip. Been there for years. The thing was, I guess some guy was trying to sell some of OJ's sports memorabilia. And OJ, and I forget how many people, let's see here. Bruce Formung, sports memorabilia dealer, testified that a group broke into his hotel room and stole the memorabilia at gunpoint. 3 days later, on September 16th, Simpson was arrested and initially held without bail. He admitted taking the items, which he said had been stolen from him, but denied breaking into the room. Simpson also denied alleged allegations that he or people with him carried weapons. Bail was later set at $125,000.
And as you can see on the screen, I've got the list of everybody that was involved, from the perpetrators to the victims in this case, including OJ himself.
Yes.
Now OJ, we got a gentleman by the name of Walter Alexander. He was the one who brought the gun in. Now he was sentenced to probation. You have C.J. Stewart. He was the driver of the Lincoln Navigator. And he stood by Simpson in the trial and didn't negotiate a plea deal. Stewart was sentenced to 15 years, eligible for parole after 90 months. That conviction was overturned because the verdict was tainted by Simpson's fame. Oh, come on. And then released after a plea deal with time served. You gotta love that one. Ryan Braun was an accomplice. He first met OJ the day of the robbery. He got probation. Charles Ehrlich, he was an accomplice. He was a friend of OJ's from South Florida, acting like he was going to be a buyer in the instance, sentenced to probation. Michael McClinton, he's an accomplice. An acquaintance of Alexander and Stewart, he brought a gun to the room, made the audio recording of the events that was used later in trial. He was sentenced to probation. The victims in this case were Thomas Riccio, an auction owner, Bruce Formung, the memorabilia dealer, later convicted of shoplifting, and Albert Beardsley, the memorabilia dealer, also convicted felon.
Huh.
Nice guys.
Oh, yeah. And then let's see here. On October 3rd, 2008, exactly 13 years after he was acquitted for the murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and Ron Goldman, Simpson was found guilty of all 12 charges.
Oh, yeah.
Right after the verdict was read, Simpson, who had been free on bail prior to this point, was handcuffed and remanded to the Clark County Detention Center without bail pending sentencing. On December 5th of 2008, Simpson was sentenced to 33 years in prison with eligibility for parole in 9 years. in October of 2017, that was in October of 2017, on July 20th of 2017, Simpson was granted parole and was freed 3 months later.
Again.
So, again, yeah.
Here's the breakdown of everything that he was convicted of. Good God Almighty! Count 1, 12 months in county jail. Count 2, 12 to 48 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections, concurrent to count 1. Count 3, 12 to 48 months concurrent to count 2. Count 4, 26 to 120 months concurrent to count 3. Count 5, a 15-year fixed term, parole eligibility after 5 years, with a consecutive 12 to 72-month term concurrent to count 4. Count 6, 15-year fixed term, parole eligibility after 5 years, with a consecutive 12 to 72-month term concurrent to count 5. Count 7, 60 to 180 months, with a consecutive 12 to 72-month term concurrent to count 6. Count 8, 60 to 180 months, with a consecutive 12 to 72-month term concurrent to count 7. Count 9, 18 to 72 months consecutive to count 8. And count 10, 18 to 72 months consecutive to count 9. And the judge rejected OJ's plea to remain free on bail while he appealed his convictions. As you mentioned, he was incarcerated in the Lovelock Correctional Center until October 1st of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, only thing you can ask at that point was it worth it?
Nope. You know, the charges, he was count 1 was conspiracy to commit a crime. Count 2 was conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Count 3 was conspiracy to commit robbery. Count 4 was burglary while in possession of a deadly weapon. Count 5 was first-degree kidnapping with the use of a deadly weapon.
That was for
count
Bruce
6.
Foreman.
That was for Bruce Foreman, yeah. And then count 6 was the same thing: first-degree kidnapping with the use of deadly weapon for Alfred.
That was for Beardsley.
Yeah. And then count 7 was robbery with the use of a deadly weapon for Bruce. And then same thing for Alfred was count 8, robbery with the use of a deadly weapon. Count 9 was assault with a deadly weapon for Bruce. And then same thing for count 10, assault with a deadly weapon for Alfred. And then count 11 and 12 were the same thing.
Coercion with a deadly.
Yeah, coercion with a deadly weapon. Coercion with a deadly weapon for both of them.
Yeah, but that's as an alternative to counts 5 and 6. But what really sealed that was OJ's order not to allow anybody to leave the room.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kidnapping.
Yes, sir.
All I will say is the type of luck OJ had throughout all this shit. Dude needs to live in Vegas.
With OJ's luck, he needs to be living anywhere but Vegas.
I know, right?
I'm just saying, I mean, he gets away with murder and all kinds of shit. I mean, any of us wouldn't have gotten away with that shit.
He didn't get away with this.
Well, true.
He didn't get away with this. He may have only served 9 years, but still.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I mean, come on now.
Now
If
he's
I
out
if
playing
I had
bad
gotten
golf.
away with a murder like that, I would. This was just his own stupidity, is what this was. Because
That,
Yes.
I
he
gotta
walked
agree.
away
I
from
gotta
a
agree.
murder case, and then he goes and decides to do something like this. This was just sheer stupidity on OJ's part.
I
Yes.
absolutely agree. My God.
100%.
I mean, anyone in their right mind that's gonna take a chance. I mean, you just got acquitted in what was publicized as the trial of the century. The last thing you want to do is do something that dumb.
That was the F up of the century.
Can't make it no more plain than that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that
I was living in Vegas. I was living in Vegas at the time, and I was just sitting there shaking my head when I saw it on the news.
Mm-hmm. I believe I was in New York at the time. Just graduated. Waited, just about to get myself ready for to go to basic training. When the original trial happened, I come back. It's about a year later. I moved to North Carolina, and then this happens. Like, good grief!
Can't keep himself out of trouble.
Not in the least.
Well, I guess that's all for us tonight.
That's all we got. That's all we got. James,
Oh,
you.
did you hear that what was it? The news I saw today. Gabby Petito's parents are suing the Utah police for $50 million.
Yep.
Get out of here.
I don't blame them.
Oh yeah.
Had they acted properly in that, there's every reason to believe that Gabby would still be here with us.
Exactly.
That I agree with you. Totally.
And also on today's news, like to say, in remembrance of Olivia Newton-John, she passed away at the age of 72 today.
Yeah.
I actually had the pleasure of meeting her one time when I worked security in Las Vegas at Bally's Casino in Las Vegas. I got to escort her to her room. She was a sweetheart, really nice lady. Sad to hear her passing.
Yeah, that came off and all. Not only in her acting in Grease, in Xanadu, her music, to me, her spirit just radiated that.
I mean, you could tell she was a sweetheart. I mean, she had me take a picture of her family. She showed me how to use her camera and everything. I took a picture of her family and friends after she had her show over at the Paris. She came over to Bally's in the lower garage, and then I escorted her up into her room. But she was a sweetheart.
We also lost another good one on yesterday. Roger E. Mosley, the original TC from the original Magnum PI. He passed away yesterday at the age of 83.
Oh wow! I can't believe he's actually that old. That makes me feel old.
Yeah. Makes us all feel old. I mean, shoot, I'm 45.
I'm 46 myself, so I feel you guys. I feel you. So,
hands up for Gen X.
Yep, right. Well, so like I said to both Olivia and Roger E, Godspeed, fly high, and may you both rest in eternal peace. You'll be missed.
Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys. James, Fox, thank you both so much for the last couple of weeks of the Fair's Bite covering OJ. If you can think of a past case we want to go over again like this, name it, and I say let's do it.
We can always cover Casey Anthony.
Huh? We can
cover Casey Anthony.
Redo Casey. I also had Joni Arias in mind.
Yeah.
We can discuss that on a later date. But for now, for everybody who joined us, I thank you. If everybody who's planning on watching this on the replay, again, thank you for joining us. This has been a pretty good two-piece breakdown of one of the biggest cases that has ever hit a courtroom, and hopefully we can come back and run back through these old cases like this again. So again, you're the engine that keeps it running, so keep it running. I'm glad to have you all here. Ernest Bethea for Arctic Fox True Crime, for James with American Family Truth and Darkness Exposed. Let's run this back again. Same bad time, same bad station. Only difference is let's bring it back to a Sunday if we can do it. All right. Until then,
sounds good.
Until then, everybody, you know what to do. Bite this.
Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, this is The Last Outlaw. I want to thank you all so much for watching this edition of Bethea's Bite. I've said it many times over that you are the engine that keeps Bethea's Bite going. Be sure to follow Bethea's Bite and Bethea's Bite Reloaded all over social media. Follow me on Facebook at The Last Outlaw 316 on my personal page, or the Bethea's Bite Reloaded page at Bethea's Bite Reloaded. Follow, like, share, leave a comment for me. Let me hear from you. Follow me on Twitter at EKB316. Follow, like, retweet, share, leave me a comment. I want to hear your thoughts. Hit me up on YouTube at user/EKB316. Like, share, subscribe, leave me a comment, and be sure to ring that notification bell for future videos. Swing by the message forum at BetheasBite.com. Register, log in, leave a comment, get in on the conversation and the investigation. Drop me an email at kingofhearts316_09@outlook.com. In the subject line, put in Bethea's Bite Reloaded, but keep your comments clean, as they may be read live. I'll have videos and links for the missing and true crime cases on my new Instagram account at EBTheLastOutlaw. I still won't mind you giving me a comment or two. Let me know what you're thinking. This is the home for news, opinions, debates, your voice, and justice served. This is Bethea's Bite, and it's real.